Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're getting back into Gamma Flight. And at this point where we find out like what happened to the team when they disappeared, like with the way that this is done, it really feels like we're planted a few concepts and plot points in this one that'll probably come back in a huge way. And I'll point out what I mean as we go through this. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so where we have last left off with Gamma Flight meeting Dion and then being intercepted by Scar, that was then cut short by the arrival of the new Hulkbusters, which Scar had pretty much just torn to pieces in order to send them a message. But then also with Scar occupied, this is what gave Gamma Flight the opportunity to get Dion out of there, with Carl Krill still having absorbed the information from Charlene McGowan's translocator. But after the team's fight with Scar, Carl had a tough time holding it together, and at the time it seemed when he tried to translocate the team back to their base that everyone was practically disintegrated. And so it's here where we follow up with a team who's reappeared in an undisclosed location, and with doing so essentially they're trying to figure out where they are. But then also in the process of figuring that out, they also find themselves attacked by a number of creatures and gamma ghosts. So with fighting and trying to figure it out, like one of the first guests is like, oh man, we in hell again. And that there's one of the funny things to where like Dion, who's new to being around this crew, she's like, wait a minute, back that up. Like, wait, y'all been to hell? Like the literal hell? And it's there where Titania more or less tells Dion that Puck has practically been everywhere. And for Puck, in response, he's more or less like, well, not everywhere, he hadn't been to Battle World. But then also like when things start to die down a bit, it's here where Doc Sasquatch lets them know like these aren't creatures from the below place, but instead a lot of these things are just some type of animal. And immediately Carl's just like, man, I ain't never seen no animal looking like that. Well, what you talking about, Doc? But then as they make their way, it's here where they find a sign that says don't retreat, fortify, power for body and mind, which in a way almost seems like a sign that's soliciting for some type of program for people to come in and take part of. But then also with seeing this literal sign along with the buildings that are intact and a number of cars outside, this also lets them know that they're still on Earth, but even still wherever they are, something here is really off. But then on top of this, they also had this theory floating around that they were taken into the future, and it was initially mentioned by Titania, but then as they approach this building, Dion, she leans into that idea as well, but not so much to the point of where she also thinks that's where they are. But instead, when Titania said that, it reminded Dion of something, but she doesn't tell them what that something is. And it's also here where we can see through Puck's narration that he notices that Dion's holding something back. But then as they make their way closer to this area, they then pass through a construction site, and it's here where they see people going on about their lives. But even with that being the case, everybody's green, everybody's glowing, and initially Carl's like, maybe we should leave these people alone. But then Puck's kind of like, you know, we're already in trouble, man, what's the worst that can happen? And right after that, they're all spotted by a number of these construction workers and then a number of other people from this town who at this point have pretty much been transformed into gamma zombies. But then with all of these guys being surrounded by what's essentially the gamma version of the Walking Dead, all of a sudden Dion, she knows where to go. And with doing this, she breaks down this wall. She tells them like, follow me, because this old factory is a storage facility now. So with them getting away from these gamma zombies, they won't really know to chase them down or follow them here. And to assure that they're not followed, Dion then absorbs the debris that she had broken down from the wall, and she uses it to seal the opening that she just made. But during this time up until this point, Puck's been more or less putting together in his mind like the idea of how they got here, and in general where this place might be in relation to Dion. Because in that final moment when Carl was translocating everyone and trying to take them back to their base, Charlene had told everyone to pretty much focus on home, which for Dion was a completely different location. And it's here where she tells them that this place, Thomasville, Texas, is where she was stationed for a little bit over the last year, because for her that was the closest thing to home that she had. And she goes on to let them know that this is the place where they conducted Project Greenspring, and this is the program that made her into what she is, and that these are the same people behind the gamma skin grafts. And initially the project was sold to Dion by someone that she trusted, which we'll talk about more in a little bit, but then also initially she was sold on the idea that it was supposed to be something to combat both Hydra and AIM. And even though she kind of stops there, Doc Sasquatch, he also assumes that this was something to combat Hulks as well, and when he says that, she doesn't deny it. But then once again, Puck notices that she's not trying to give all the information, but even with noticing that, he still doesn't press her to get more answers because he knows that'll backfire and likely they'll learn less. But then instead, with just letting Dion continue, she also goes on to mention that when she found out that the guy behind it, when she found out he had other plans, that's when she went AWOL. But then as she continues, Dion then lets them know that the people that they had seen outside, that they had taken part in a version of this project as well, which for them refers to the sign that they had saw outside that mentioned Fortify. And for the people of this town, they were sold that the Fortify program, that it was like a type of brain body supplement solution, but instead it was still the same grafting procedure, but in their case it was done in much smaller doses. And instead of the huge chunks like we'd seen with the Abomination handing to Dr. Alba, these people were given more of a tapeworm size implementation that would initially make them stronger and heal faster, but the long-term effects, as they turned out, were more of a gamma zombie looking result. Or so it seems at this point. We'll get into more of the specifics on what it actually is in a little bit. But while they're having this conversation back at their base, Charlene is here trying to figure out what exactly happened when they disappeared, as far as where or if they were translocated or just flat out disintegrated. But while she's trying to figure all of this out, Rick is also trying to get her attention and let her know that he feels something. But with him saying that, she just brushes him off, letting Rick know that she doesn't have the time, she has to figure this out. But with her ignoring Rick, Dell then punches the ground like, no, like you gotta listen to what Rick's trying to tell you. Because it's hard enough for Rick to try to get the words out, but also with Dell and Rick sharing the same body, Dell is aware that Rick has something that he's trying to say, and that it's something of significance. But with this happening, Charlene listens, and is here where Rick lets her know that he can feel them in the shadows. But once again, he finds difficulty in trying to express exactly what he's trying to say, because Rick and Dell find it hard to even focus, with them sharing the same body, and sometimes their thoughts bleed into one another. And on top of that, when it comes to motor functions and them actually trying to say words, it can be very difficult and frustrating with their nervous systems being conjoined, which in their case at times is like two people trying to make two different phone calls using one line. But with this happening and the two of them getting frustrated, Charlene comes up with a solution that she actually uses when she's trying to focus and her brain is pulling her in different directions. And as a solution, she grabs this ball which has the Captain America like shield logo on it, which again I feel like is a bit of a nod to what we had talked about with her past, with her previous connections to Weapons Plus that we had talked about in Immortal Hulk, which I also think came up again when we were talking about Weapon H with Absolute Carnage, which really at this point I don't think is 100% confirmed, but during the time that the Immortal Hulk was going against Zemnu, it really hinted like there was more to her past than just her connection with Kingpin and her history at Caltech. But even still, that's one of those things I'm still kind of waiting on to solidify. But with Charlene giving them this ball, she tells them that this is something that helped her when she had first came out and she was having panic attacks, but with tossing the ball from one hand to the other, it would get both sides of her brain to work together when everything else was just pulling her apart. And so when she hands the ball to Dell and Rick and she tells them to do the same, she then also tells them to speak to the ball, and with doing so, just whatever comes out just comes out. And with doing this, it helps. And with the two of them closer in sync, they're then able to tell Charlene to look east, which at this point helps them to get closer to finding the Gamma Flight crew. But then it's here where we go back to the others, to where after Dion has given them pretty much the idea of where they are and how this place got like this, and it's here where Carl makes the suggestion that maybe he transported them to some kind of post-Hulk apocalypse future. And it's kind of funny because Puck is pretty much like, shut up Carl, you big dumb mother. But then also you kind of have this case where Carl, he needs to get patched up too. But at this point it's kind of an issue because Carl doesn't really have much to absorb from to close off the cut that he got from Scar, so Puck kind of helps him out with that. But then it's also here where they more or less try to figure out how many of these gamma zombies that they'll have to go through in order to get out of here, and it's here where Dion tells them that the town's population was about 40,000, and out of that 40,000, about 10% of the people there, they took this supplement, which in that case gives them about 4,000 of these zombies to get through if they want to get out of this town. But with Titania looking out the window, she notices that a lot of these people who are gamma zombified, they had pretty much just went back to what they were doing, and not just like they had forgot that Gamma Flight was there, but almost as if they had forgot that Gamma Flight had ever existed. And with seeing this, it's here where Puck pieces together that where they are is actually like a version of the Gamma Astral plane. And even though it's not specifically the below place, it is connected to it. And with this being the case, in theory, this is where gamma energy goes when it's not used or being deployed. And for example, everyone in this town who's been a part of the gamma grafting program, there's also like a gamma astral projection that's also here representing that power that they're pulling from. But then in the middle of them having this conversation, they hear a growl, and when they see where it came from in this warehouse, right away they see that it's General 14, which I think is how we were saying his name back at the time. But this is the guy who had taken over for General Ross after his quote-unquote death, to where General 14 had stepped in as shadow-based commander, where we had seen him pursuing the Hulk throughout the Immortal Hulk series, which also at the time, like we had seen, had led to his gruesome death, which here, as it would appear, he's still kind of stuck in that state. But then it's here with seeing him where Dion just goes off, and it's more or less here where we find out that General 14, he's the one who had persuaded Dion to enter into this program, but then also in addition to that, he's Dion's father. But then it's also here where we get the explanation that at some point General 14 had come back through the green door. He wasn't fully in control, but instead someone else was, who in this case likely was Emil Blonsky, the Abomination. And what this does is set up the idea that Emil Blonsky had taken over 14's body after he had died and used his influence to change the direction of Project Greenspring, which is also where the locals then got involved, to where under false pretense they were kind of baited in and turned into undetectable superhumans. But then also with seeing this, we get this moment to where the general, he tries to apologize or make amends with Dion, because prior to this point he really hadn't been there for her like he feels like he should have. But then before he can finish his sentence, Dion and Gamma-Fly are just whisked away because Charlene, Rick, and Dale, they had pinpointed where they were and how to get them back. But for Dion, with her finding out this new information about her father and the fact that he was being used by Emil Blonsky, which that part I'm pretty sure she figured out by the silhouette, like it was kind of obvious. And I mean, like with her father giving her the details of him being used, the like by who part was kind of a given. But with her discovering this, she then makes up her mind that she's gonna trust Gamma-Fly and help them take down everyone involved in the whole situation of her father being used. Which even still, with that being the case, it kind of feels like for the long term, like it's something to still watch out for, because it really seems like when it comes down to it that she'll side with her father, regardless of what his perspective may be when all of this is said and done. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support, and for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. So now, like, this one had a bit of that Dr. Alba weirdness written all over the whole zombie thing. But then again, even with that, it feels like this whole Gamma Astral plane thing, like that just really feels like they're building on top of what we've seen for so long with Banner being able to see Ghost or Gamma Ghost, which recently we've also gotten with Jackie McGee, and with us now getting the additional information of that quote-unquote Gamma Astral plane being connected to the below place. Like, it really has me curious to see what Shaman's gonna do when he comes back and they fill him in on their most recent trip. But either way, let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below or over on Discord, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.